Hey, welcome back to my channel. Are you ready to embark on a wild adventure through time? Today, we're gonna travel back to the early 1600s, when a handful of intrepid Dutch explorers set sail across the vast Atlantic Ocean in search of new lands to conquer. And guess what? They stumbled upon a small forested island at the mouth of a river that would later become one of the most iconic cities in the world. That's right. We're talking about none other than New York City, the Big Apple, the cons of America. So grab your time-traveling devices and get ready to explore how New York City went from a tiny settlement to the bustling metropolis we know and love today. Okay, let's get to it. Let me introduce you to our brave band of Dutch explorers who had the vision and the guts to establish the very first European settlement on the island of Manhattan. Back in the early 1600s, the Dutch West India Company was on a mission to find new trade routes and establish colonies in the New World. And these explorers were their best and brightest. After braving the high seas and enduring months at sea, they finally spotted the shores of North America and knew they had found something special. You can probably picture the scene. A small boat approaches the island with a few dozen explorers on board. They paddle ashore and step onto the sandy beach for the first time. The air is filled with the sounds of birds and the rustling of leaves, and the explorers are stunned by the beauty of their surroundings. They're also probably exhausted, hungry, and a little bit scared. I mean, they've been at sea for months, and they're in a completely new and unfamiliar place. But these explorers were not the type to be deterred. They wasted no time in getting to work. They began surveying the land and looking for a suitable spot to establish their settlement. They needed somewhere that was easily defensible and close to water, since trade was going to be one of their primary focuses. And that's when they discovered the perfect location, a small peninsula at the southern tip of the island, protected by a natural harbor and surrounded by rivers perfect for trade and travel. And so the Dutch decided to make this their home and founded the settlement of New Amsterdam in 1624. But wait a minute. We know this story didn't start with the Dutch. For thousands of years before the Europeans arrived, the island was home to a vibrant and thriving community of Native Americans, particularly the Lenape people. These indigenous tribes had their own rich culture, language, and way of life. And when the Europeans arrived, they were eager to establish relationships with them. At first, the Dutch explorers actually got along pretty well with the Lenape people. They traded with them, learned about their culture, and even adopted some of their customs. But as the colony of New Amsterdam grew, things started to change. The Dutch settlers began encroaching on the Lenape lands, and the two groups increasingly clashed over issues like land ownership and natural resources. This tension eventually led to violence, and the Lenape people were forced to leave their ancestral lands and move further west. Sadly, this is a story that was repeated all over the United States, as European settlers continued to expand westward and displace the indigenous populations. Now let's talk about what life was like in the early days of New Amsterdam. The Dutch settlers were a hardy bunch, used to the harsh conditions of life at sea. They were also highly skilled traders and businessmen, which was essential to the success of the colony. Life in New Amsterdam was not easy. The settlers had to work hard to build homes and sustain themselves in the new world. They cleared forests, planted crops, and hunted for food. They also had to deal with the threat of attacks from rival European powers like the English and the French. But despite the challenges, the Dutch settlers persevered and eventually established a thriving colony. New Amsterdam became a hub of trade and commerce, with settlers coming from all over Europe to buy furs, timber, and other valuable resources. The city also became a melting pot of cultures, with people from different backgrounds and religions living and working together. So here's the thing. The Dutch had a good run in North America, but it was always meant to be temporary. See, the Dutch West India Company wasn't really in it for the long haul. They were more interested in using the colony as a way to funnel wealth back to the Netherlands. And as the years went on, they began to see New Amsterdam as a liability rather than an asset. In 1664, the English King Charles II granted his brother, the Duke of York, the territory of New Netherland, which included New Amsterdam, and the English quickly took control of the city without firing a single shot. Talk about a plot twist. So why did the English decide to take over New Amsterdam? Well, it turns out that the English had been eyeing the Dutch colony for a while. They saw its strategic value as a potential naval base and a hub for trade and commerce. Plus, the English and the Dutch had a bit of a rivalry going on at the time, so it was only a matter of time before the two went head to head. And when the English decided to flex their military might and take over the city, the Dutch couldn't really do anything to stop them. When the English took over New Amsterdam, they renamed it New York in honor of the Duke of York. And the city's flag was changed from this to this. Can you imagine the uproar if someone swapped your city's flag without asking you first? But hey, at least the English kept the name New Amsterdam for the state of New York. But let's be real, nobody really knows why they chose that name. All we have to go on is a letter from the governor of Virginia who suggested the name New York because he thought it sounded similar to a city in England, classic English. Anyway, under English rule, New York continued to thrive as a center of trade and commerce. The city's population grew rapidly, fueled by the arrival of European immigrants. The English also invested heavily in the city's infrastructure, building new roads, bridges, and public buildings. This era of New York's history was a pivotal moment for the city's development. As the city grew and prospered, it also became a microcosm of the larger trends shaping the world. The influx of European immigrants, for example, helped to turn New York into a truly cosmopolitan city. People from all over the world came to live, work, and visit New York, making it one of the most diverse cities in the world. Okay, now let's fast forward to the American Revolution. When the revolution broke out in 1776, New York was caught in the middle. The city's population was divided on the issue of independence, and the city suffered greatly as a result. The British occupied New York for most of the war and used it as a base for their military operations. The Continental Army made several attempts to recapture the city, but were ultimately unsuccessful. Despite the turmoil, New York remained an important city during the war. George Washington took the first presidential oath of office on Wall Street in 1789. The city was chosen for the inauguration because it was seen as a neutral ground between the northern and southern states. And then, in the 1800s, New York experienced another wave of growth and change. The opening of Ellis Island in 1892 led to the arrival of millions of immigrants from all over the world, including Ireland, Italy, Germany, and China. These immigrants came to escape persecution, poverty, or simply to seek a better life for themselves and their families. The impact of immigration on New York's culture, economy, and society was profound. New York became known as the melting pot of cultures, and the city's cuisine, art, and music all benefited from the influx of new ideas and traditions. In addition to immigration, several major events shaped New York's history in the 1800s. The Erie Canal, which connected the Great Lakes to the Atlantic Ocean, was completed in 1825, making New York a major transportation hub. The city also hosted the First and Second World's Fairs in 1853 and 1869 respectively, which showcased the latest technological innovations and drew visitors from around the globe. Fast forward to the 20th century, and New York continued to grow and evolve. The construction of the Empire State Building in 1931 symbolized the city's economic power and architectural prowess. The city also became a hub for innovation and creativity, with Harlem becoming a center for jazz music and Greenwich Village attracting artists and writers. But let's not forget about the challenges New York faced in the 20th century. The city suffered through the Great Depression of the 1930s and the fiscal crisis of the 1970s. But each time New Yorkers pulled together and worked to overcome these obstacles. Today, New York City is widely regarded as one of the most influential and important cities in the world. The city's economy is a major driver of the US economy, and New York is a global leader in finance, technology, fashion, and culture. The city is home to some of the most iconic landmarks in the world, including the Statue of Liberty, the Empire State Building, and Central Park. New York is also a major destination for tourists from all over the world, and the city's cultural diversity is one of its most defining characteristics. So there you have it, folks. The story of New York City, from its humble beginnings as a Dutch settlement to the global metropolis we know and love today. What do you think? Did you learn something new? Are you surprised by any of the twists and turns in New York's history? Let us know in the comments below. And if you want to learn more about New York City, we've got plenty of videos to keep you exploring. Just click on the links above. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be notified when we drop new videos. Thanks for joining us on this journey through time, and we'll see you next time.